Hello, everyone, and welcome to Economics Unplugged with Praful Raj. This podcast features an enlightening discussion with an economist and professor, delving deep into the intricacies of the Indian economy. Today, our guest is Dr. Ajay Shah. He is a distinguished economist, author, columnist with a diverse career spanning academia, government, consultancy, and research. He served as a professor at National Institute for Public Finance and Policy for 13 years and has been consultant to the Ministry of Finance. He co-founded the non-profit research organization named XKDR, which stands for Cross-Disciplinary Knowledge Data Research. Dr. Shah, an IT graduate with a PhD in economics from USC, who also authored one of the best books of 2020, earning the prestigious Scotch Literature Award for the book In Service of the Public, The Art and Science of Economic Policy. Today we will dive into one of the most transformative technologies of 21st century that's taking the world by storm, artificial intelligence. This rapidly evolving field is driving tech companies to billions of dollars of valuation, offering immense opportunities while posing significant risks. We'll explore how India is harnessing AI and data to tackle critical challenges with insights from Dr. Ajay Shah. To give a brief background about the framework and policy which has been developed by India, Niti Aayog, India's premier public policy think tank, has introduced the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, that is AI for All, focusing on key sectors like healthcare, agricultural, and education. In addition, two guiding principles were also unveiled to stir AI development. Recently, the Indian government approved a substantial investment of $1.25 billion to advance AI infrastructure, including the development of large language models and computing capabilities. This funding will also support AI startups and facilitate AI-driven solutions for the public sector. So let's hear from our esteemed guest, Dr. Ajay Shah. So thank you so much, uh, Dr. Ajay Shah, to join our podcast. It is an immense pleasure for me.
I'm happy to be here. Let's do a fun conversation.
Yes, kind of conversation, nothing so serious, but yes. So to start with that, sir, what do you think like the AI and India, like the brief background, what is happening, how India is using AI and how Indian government is taking because it's a risk also. So yes.
Okay. The most important stuff is not happening in the government. Okay. So
Okay.
government is a minor part of the India and AI story. And my analogy is the IT industry. Okay. So let's just first leave aside the latest 2 years of AI.
Okay.
IT is India's greatest industry. IT is the most important industry in India. Okay. If India is faring a little bit better than Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and Pakistan, it is because there is $300 billion a year of IT exports. Okay. So
Yes, that's true.
I have a blog article. I'll give you the URL, and I carefully analyze the industries of India. And it is amazing that today the biggest industry of India is IT.
IT.
So India is the beneficiary of the IT revolution. And the IT revolution is done by private people. It is the firms that did the IT revolution. The government didn't matter. Meaning Nehru and others built IITs long ago. So that created a little bit of a better initial condition. But again, one should not overstate those quantities. The IT workforce is millions of people. The IIT people are a tiny drop of that ocean. So there is a vast, extremely successful IT industry. It is the most important industry of India, and it was done by the private sector. It is not done by the government. Now, there are some IT applications in government. They're okay. There's nothing great. So IT is neither necessary nor sufficient for building a good government. In India, by and large, the results have been lukewarm. So I'm not thrilled at the evolution of the Indian government in terms of what has been done using the IT. The problems are deeper. Okay, so you have to be a philosopher. You have to be a humanities person.
Yes.
If you read the book that Vijay Kelkar and I wrote, most of the story is located in public administration, in law, in economics. And the IT is a small part. Okay, so imagine if in 1995 I had told you that there are going to be like millions and millions of CPUs all over the Indian state. Would you have been optimistic that it would have made the Indian government much better. But the
Not
Indian
really.
government, yeah, the Indian government did not become much better by
Yes.
putting in a lot of CPUs. If anything, it got a bit worse. So I'm not a great enthusiast about what IT has done for the Indian government, but IT has been a revolution for India. India is the Indian society, it's not the Indian government. They're two different things. There
Yeah,
is a
two
ruling
different
class,
aspects of it. Yes.
there's the ruling class, and then there is we the people. So for we the people, IT has worked fantastically. IT is the biggest industry. It employs millions of people. It creates $300 billion of exports. It has worked fantastically. Now let's apply this whole story into the world of AI. And I basically think the same, that in the private sector, there is energy, there is capability. India is an important aspect of the global production process of AI and AI applications. And I'm optimistic that the genius, the brain power of India will do very well. And I mean the people, not the
Yes.
government.
Yeah. So,
In
yeah,
in
but
government, nothing much is going on. It's irrelevant. AI doesn't change anything much for the Indian state.
no, I understand, but like as you said that Indian firms too, not the government, but definitely
Correct.
government, like what we think, definitely government plays an important role in laying down the framework, the policies, and everything. So,
No, I don't agree. No, I don't agree.
okay,
No. So $300 billion of exports, millions of workers care more about GDPR in Europe and European, American, Japanese collaborations on AI regulation because they'll have to build the damn systems that comply with that. They're not building for India. They don't care
yes,
about India. So the glory of India is that there is a internationalized, outwardly oriented, export oriented IT sector, a lot of it by global companies operating in India, a lot of it by Indian companies doing global work. The Indian government is a sideshow, is not important to that story.
no, so the thing, so why I'm saying this because recently, like Indian government approved $1.25 billion of investment into AI.
Yeah.
So the question
Yeah.
is like, definitely government is not helping in exporting the IT industry services, but do they using those technologies to solve like agriculture, education, and healthcare, which is the framework laid by the Niti Aayog, like how AI will improve? Just question around
Yeah.
that first, like
So
how
so
you
again,
think.
let's two distinct questions and let's constantly keep our eyes on the ball on the clarity.
Yes.
Did the IT revolution help the Indian state become much better? It is doubtful. Is there any great possibility of an AI revolution helping the Indian state become better? It is doubtful. If anything, things can actually become worse. Okay, so
Okay.
when you discuss the Indian state, you have to be very cautious and very skeptical. The Indian state suffers from severe difficulties of central planning, of a lack of rule of law, of arbitrary power of the government. And it can well be, in the priceless phrase of the great political scientist James C. Scott, who died recently, there is a
Yeah.
problem of state legibility. It is a government gaining the ability to see into our lives, to see our personal life, to see our financial life. And that may not be in the best interests of the people, because when there is a lack of rule of law, a government can start trying to control people. A government can come up with laws and rules that create monopolies that favor some companies that harm other companies. So the Indian government is a very difficult organization. And as I say, when I look back at the last 20 years, it is not clear to me that the IT helped make it better. In fact, by and large, millions of CPUs went into the Indian state. And over that period, the Indian state actually, in my opinion, got worse over the last 20 years. So the Indian state is a completely different matter.
Okay.
The Indian private sector, the Indian IT industry is a completely different matter. There, I'm pretty optimistic. And then there's a small middle road. Are there areas and activities where the Indian state can help? Okay, so now again, let's look back at the IT revolution. How did the Indian state help in the IT revolution? Two things. First is that the Indian state created things like the IITs, which created a foundation of the technical expertise, which got India going. Okay, so in the early days, it was a small workforce, but it was outrageously high quality, which helped attract more and more global users to come and do things in India. So, are there human capital initiatives? Are there initiatives by the Indian state that will foster the knowledge and the innovation capabilities of the best experts of India, mostly in the private sector? Okay, it's a good question. So
Yeah.
far, I have not seen evidence of that, but it is something to think about. That are there activities that are being begun by the Indian state that can foster the capabilities and the competence of the private Indian workforce? Okay, it's a
Yes.
fair question. It's worth doing. By the way, as an aside, the great Indian scientists R.A. Mashelkar and Susan Thomas and I recently wrote a paper on India innovation policy, which is about this kind of question.
Okay.
How can the Indian state participate and help make a difference to the growth of engineering and scientific and intellectual capability in India? It's a good question, but that's a separate question. Okay. And finally, the third piece, what did the Indian state do to help the IT revolution? They helped by getting out of the way. They got out of the way of the telecom restrictions,
Yes.
where only VSNL was a Sarkari PSU with a monopoly on international telephony. And they created openness for private and foreign actors to come flood the Indian market with competition and telecom, and that helped the IT revolution. They got out of the way of preventing cross-border financial and business activities by Indian firms, which is what created the corporate finance and the firms and the complexity of Infosys doing an IPO and so on, which is great. They got out of the way. So I would apply all these analogies here that what is the most useful thing that the Indian state can do to help the AI revolution
Get
happen in
out
India?
of the way. To get out of
Partly
the.
it will be get out of the way. Partly
Yeah.
can you foster capabilities in the private sector? Are there ways to bring government money and government capabilities to grow expertise in India? That's a good project worth trying.
Okay. So that's a good. I mean, I thought India will be helping with this investment and Niti Aayog being.
Again, when you say India, I want you to be very careful.
No,
There are
no.
two distinct people in the room. The Indian state is a coercive creature who is a ruling class. And there is
Ruling.
the Indian people. They're two distinct things. Don't mix them up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
People
Indian.
of India is not the Indian state.
That's true. That's true. So
So
with that,
when people say India won a cricket match, I get very nervous. Some Indians won a cricket match, and the Indian state had nothing to do with it. So you got to constantly manage this terminology.
okay. So I think my question will little bit change on that.
Yes, please.
Since you talk about Indian people, not Indian states or India as a country, so with that, we have like millions of jobs, Indians doing. So if AI comes, we need a more skilled people, more like, more tech driven people. So as of now, do you think that India's capability centers and the workforce adequately, leverage the AI for outsourcing services? And the second question, can we also expect the surge in demand for of Indian tech, or like not just tech engineers, but there are different diverse, in other sector, other industries and other education level. So will their demand will increase or even more, growth as compared to what happened in 20s, I mean 1920, about the IT revolution? What do you think on that part?
So these are incredibly important questions. Once again, IT-enabled services is India's biggest industry. Okay,
Yes.
that is the one thing that India does. So you want to talk about the future of India, you have to talk about this industry. This is the heart and soul of what India has succeeded in. India has failed in garments. India has failed in automobiles. India has failed in many many sectors, but India has succeeded beyond our wildest dreams in IT. Now, this could cut in a couple of different ways. So here is one pessimistic story that there's a lot of low end entry level capabilities,
Yes.
and the AI will knock out the call center worker, and the speech recognition and transcription and chatbots, all that kind of stuff, will do an automated junior service sector function, and millions of people in India will lose their jobs. Okay, so
Yes.
this is one kind of story that can be told, and it
Yeah,
is
we will
indeed
come to
a
this question later on, like how the
yeah,
unemployment will be impacted, but yes, continue,
yeah.
sir.
So this is a threat. On the
Yeah.
other hand, let me flip it around. Okay, so I'm sure you have done little experiments of trying to use modern code generators like Cursor or like GitHub Copilot, okay, or Google Gemini,
uh,
uh,
Chat
and I've
GTP,
also ChatGPT,
Perplexity. Yeah.
Perplexity. Yeah, so I've done my fair share of experimentation in that.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is that these are tools that actually get a junior low grade person up and running rapidly. Okay, so if you have very low quality staff, then actually that low quality staff can do something by using the LLM assisted programming.
Programming,
Okay,
yes.
or writing a customer service response or processing an insurance claim. So in a way, there is a crisis of a very large number of extremely low skilled people in the Indian labor market. Okay, mostly school and college in India is useless. People learn nothing. So there is a vast workforce of people who know next to nothing. Now, traditionally, we would have said that the employable workforce in India is only 5, 10, 20 million. Beyond that, the quality collapses. So maybe by use of these AI systems, we are able to convert 100 million people into employable. In that, they do some first cut of the work. So I am very conscious that you have to be skeptical about whatever work is done using an LLM. Okay. The quality is
Yes.
poor. It's full of mistakes. They hallucinate. Okay. I'm not a rara about the glory of the LLMs. But the question is, you've got like a useless, low quality worker armed with an LLM. Are they able to produce something more useful than they could previously do? Because already for many years in the Indian IT services industry and in the Indian services export industry, there is a well established concept of having a large number of warm bodies that do low grade work and then have supervisors who will check their work and clean their work and fix up their work.
Yes.
So potentially, you could engineer organizations which are now able to utilize 100 million Indian workers instead of 10 million. Okay, it could happen. So this is the grand question of the age for India. Which way will it go? Okay, in one way, the 10 million workforce collapses into a 500,000 workforce
Okay.
because the role for the low end staff goes away. It is just done by the AI. And then you're down to jobs for only genuine skills. You don't get a job for being B grade and C grade. This is one possibility. It is something to think about. That if you want to make shitty illustrations, then the Gen AI makes a better illustration.
Yes,
Now
that.
there is a market only for a genuine human artist, or all the other artwork is done by the Gen AI. Okay, so this is one design of the future, and it could happen, and we should debate. I don't have a horse in the race, but I just want to show scenarios. On the other hand, imagine that Indian management teams are able to apply their management genius and create these hybrids of expert and novice,
No.
where the novice works with the Gen AI tool, does a first cut of a bad response, of a bad work product, of a bad piece of code. Okay. And then it goes up the chain to genuine human beings with genuine knowledge and genuine expertise. And then they are able to check, polish, refine, and get it up into the more
Ye-
production state
More
of a
production,
good
yes.
quality. Yeah. So if that can work, then potentially this is Chandi, because then we are expanding the Indian workforce from 10 million employable to 100 million employable. Okay. So these are two futures. I don't have a horse in this race, but I want to say all of us should think, debate, analyze, and understand that which way does this go? Do you go to a collapse of the Indian IT enabled services world from 10 million to 500,000? Do you go to an expansion from 10 million employable to 100 million employable? This is the most important question in India's economic future.
What do you think? Like, let's take hypothetical situation. You an economist, you have seen the world like from like for last 2 decades at least. So what do you think India will go in which direction? No, I would say, in my opinion, it will not be extreme side. Probably it will be like taking the part of both. Some employability will collapse, that is for true. But at the same point of time, as the second part of the story can come into the play.
So I'm optimistic
Yes.
in around the following pieces. So first, I want to emphasize that the Indian IT industry is not static. The IT-enabled services, the services exports industry is not static. It's really been around since the late 80s, and they have grown and grown, and they've been through many ups and downs and many changes. So
Yes.
it's an unrecognizably different industry than it was in the late 80s. Okay, so I graduated IIT Bombay in 1987. At that time, like Citibank Overseas Software Limited, COSL, in the seats in Bombay was considered one of the great software export organizations out of India. From there, there has just been evolution and evolution and evolution. And so I say that the leadership of these firms gets full marks for their adaptability. That they have gone to hell and back over and over. I respect and admire the maneuverability, the adaptability, the capability for change that is there in the hands of these people. It's a very smart, capable leadership cadre that is there in the Indian IT-enabled services firms. Okay, so this is my claim one, that this is not the first revolution that took place. I mean, for example, in the late 80s, when the Indian IT services industry began, there was no internet. So the
Yes.
entire, like there was COBOL and mainframe type work that was happening in India. Then came Unix and the internet. And the Indian IT industry adapted and became part of that.
Yes.
So I am optimistic that there is a brain power, there is a capability at the leadership level to look coldly at the changing world and to constantly adapt and modify the life design and the processes so as to adapt to a changing world. At the leadership level, there is that world-class brain power and adaptability. So this is my claim one, that is a case for optimism. Then my claim two for optimism is that as an economist, I will locate this as a productivity change in 500 years of productivity changes. Okay. There's been a steam engine, there's been a railway line, there was Marconi, there was telegraph. Okay,
Yes,
there's
definitely.
electricity. There have been so many revolutions of productivity in the past. It never happened that hiring human workers went out of fashion. It just changed. That instead of
Yeah.
hiring coal miners, you started hiring workers in a electricity driven assembly line and so on. So there will always be a demand for humans.
Yes, that's
And
true.
yeah, and there now again the Indian workforce wins. That this is a English speaking workforce at essentially the lowest prices in the whole world. So you want high volume English speaking workforce which is reasonably adaptable, which is reasonably capable, then it's India. There's no other place in the world. You go to China, you don't get the English speakers. You go anywhere else, you don't match the Indian price. You don't
Yes.
get the quantities. So you can hire 10,000, 20,000 workers with a certain amount of knowledge and specialization in India, like you can nowhere in the world. So this is my optimism number two, that the world will always require workers. The nature of those workers will change. So I have no doubt that there is going to be a sea change in the lives of the workers. Life will not remain the same, but the world will always require workers. The world will
Yes.
always require engineers. The world will always require programmers. There will always be customer support. There will always be insurance claims. There will always be risk management. The nature of the work will change, but it will not be as if working goes out of fashion. And then India, okay, English speaking
Yeah.
and high quantities, high volumes. You want any arcane specialized skill. You can put together a 500-man workforce, a 1,000-man workforce in India within 6 months. This is
Yes.
unmatched. Other than the United States, there is no other place where large workforces in specialized skills can be built in low time in India. So this is my second reason for optimism, that this is a great country in terms of these kinds of capability, the adaptability, and the people, the workers and the managers come with a lack of a sense of entitlement. People know
Yes.
that life is a struggle. You have to work hard. They're not resentful about changes in their life. People will, jump into change and overcome the change and conquer the change. So this is my source of optimism. My third source of optimism is that the AI LLM revolution is a massive disruption everywhere. Okay,
Yes.
so it is changing the lives everywhere. Now, these disruptions are a political and a business opportunity for firms to break with traditional ways of working. So imagine you're a German firm, you have had thousands of employees in Germany, and you were starting to nibble into moving operations in India. Well, here is the structural break. Here is a point of culmination of the old ways. And this is a time when you have to rethink the organization in fundamental ways. Many organizations will face severe competitive stress. They will have their back against the wall. And then the decisions will be made to reimagine the firm, putting a bigger chunk of people in India because that is a pathway to getting a better workforce at a lower price. So, this is my third reason why I am relatively optimistic about how this story will play out for India. So I've given you three reasons. That reason one, the leadership in India is outstanding. They have conquered many things in the past, they will conquer this.
This
Claim
also.
two, no other place in the world with a large scale English speaking workforce. The magic in India is English. That really everybody in the Indian elite
Yes.
groks English, and there is unlimited expansion of the English workforce going on. Every family in India wants their kids to learn English.
English.
The quality and capability of English has just kept on increasing. And third, that this could well be the critical crisis point which rocks the internal political control of many first world firms, and it forces them to a reckoning. And the way to survive is to sack half the people in the first world and move large scale operations to India. So this could work out well for India.
So yes, from your optimism, we think that yes, definitely the private firm is gonna contribute, and they used to contribute, and it will continue to contribute to the
Well,
growth.
so there will be a big upheaval. Some
Yes,
of the managers, some of the firms, some of the employees who are not intellectually nimble and are able to change their ways and learn new things will fall by the wayside. But
yes, yeah,
India will do well. Okay. Many Indian firms will do badly. Many Indian
badly.
individuals will do badly. But
Correct.
India, on average, will do well.
Okay, so now coming back to the again the my previous first question, that as you mentioned, India is different from Indian people. Now, Indian
India is
firms,
different from the Indian state.
Indian state, sorry, Indian state.
Okay.
Now,
India is the country made up of people like you and me. The Indian state is a small community that exerts coercive power over the people of India.
yes. So how do you think the government might be not be doing right now, and they have not done before, but what do you think, in your opinion, that the government will use such tools and with the help of Indian firms, private firms, to solve the basic problems in maybe agricultural or maybe healthcare or education?
No, nothing. India is a third world country. It's a very poor country. The work that is needed to be done in India is basics.
Yeah, so
So the Indian
and
state fails on basics. You want to make the police work. You want to make the courts work. You want to do basics of monetary policy. You want to do basics of financial regulation. Okay, remember the British conquered India without email. Okay, you need to do basics, and we should have no illusions about adding computer systems is just not the essence. The battle is elsewhere. How do you make the Indian police work better? It has nothing to do with IT. How do you make Indian courts work better? It has nothing to do with IT. How
no,
do you make
that
Indian politics? How do you make Indian politics work better? It has nothing to do with IT.
yeah, I understand, like of course it's people and we have to take decision, we have to frame policies for accountability in terms of police and
Correct.
everything in policing.
Correct.
Mhm. But there is also a thing that with the use of tech you can little bit increase the accountability and better management of the workforce,
Yeah.
like.
So, as I said, when I look back at the last 20 years, I think that this has not gone great. Okay, millions and millions of CPUs have been put into the Indian state, and it hasn't helped too much. Let me tell you some of the elements of the argument more clearly once again. I had already said some of these things before, but I just want to organize this clearly. So, claim one, that the fundamental problems of the Indian state do not involve IT. They involve control of the coercive power of the Indian state. So, you need the Indian state to get out of the way. You needed the Indian state to do telecom reforms so as to allow private and foreign companies to compete in India. You need to get the Indian state to not build monopolies like Air India or UPI. This has nothing to do with technology. This has to do with politics, with philosophy, with economics. That you need to build a leadership cadre in India that knows politics, that knows philosophy, that knows law, that knows ethics, that knows public administration, that knows economics, so that we stop building monopolies by the Indian state, so that we stop blocking foreigners from operating in India. So that is problem number one. That is,
Yes.
the Indian state needs to get out of the way. It has nothing to do with IT. Okay. Problem two, the IT systems create greater state legibility. They, at a poor state of development, when there are low checks and balances, IT systems are giving the Indian state knowledge and information and control over the Indian people, which is not a healthy thing. When the government sees our life, you need commensurate checks and balances. Here in India, we have a premature state legibility. where at a premature state in the Indian development journey, the Indian state is getting to see a lot of information about the people, but the Indian state lacks checks and balances. And it often uses that information in ways that harm the people. So this is problem number two, that when Britain was a developing country, the government did not have information about the people. If that information had been given to 18th century or 19th century British state, they may have abused it. They would have gone and done bad things with it. They would have harmed the people.
Yes.
And that would have disrupted the rise of Britain as a democracy. Today, IT in the Indian state is generating a greater risk that it is harming the emergence of India as a genuine democracy. Problem three, for lots of people in the Indian state, whether they are politicians or they are IIT grads who are employed in the Indian state, building IT systems has become the luxury that you have stopped taking interest in fixing the Indian state. People just want to go build an IT system, and everybody applauds. Yay, I have an IT system. And it is a distraction that is taking attention away from solving the genuine problems of the Indian state. So these are my three concerns. That problem one, IT has almost nothing to do with India's development problems. Problem two, IT has created premature state legibility that is actually harming the country. Problem three, this notion that somehow computers can help or become important in the Indian development journey has become a distraction, that a joint secretary gets applause when they launch a website. Launching websites has nothing to do with the Indian journey. India is a very poor country. There are many desperate things that need to be done, and they have nothing to do with IT.
Yeah, that's quite a different point of view, which I really got to know from you. Like, yeah, and it's about the mindset. I would say it's about the mindset on that. So with that, since we talked about that, let's little bit digress on that. This lateral entry. So I think if Indian government has to literally do something, with tech, which will actually help, not just uploading by, creating website or something like that. What do you think that the lateral entry of these people, like maybe like you, who has also engineering background, they are economics, maybe they are philosopher, getting into the government, and can they make impact, considering that the mindset, at least few politicians will have a mindset to go towards the change and changing the norm and system? Is it possible even, or it just a dream?
So it has always been possible for uh, the political leadership to bring in OSDs and consultants. Okay, so I worked in the Ministry of Finance for
Yes.
4 years as a consultant. I was hired by Yashwant Sinha. Then I stayed with Jaswant Singh. Then I stayed with Chidambaram, and I exited in October 2005. And
Yes.
I'm not a UPSC civil servant. I am a career economist. So those
Yes.
pathways are already there. Uh, I'm perhaps going to digress, but I just want to get onto a larger
Picture.
problem.
Yeah.
The Indian government's HR system is completely broken. Okay, it's a horrible system. How people are hired is horrible. In case you haven't done so, I encourage you to look at the UPSC exam paper. I just shake my head in disbelief at what are we doing? What kind of people are we choosing based on this exam? The exam seems nonsense to me. And how you promote people, how you reward people, what kind of compensation is being done. Everything about the Indian government's HR process is broken. Now, what is needed is a 25-year journey of fixing the Indian government's HR process. It's difficult, it is slow, it requires expertise, it requires effort. And
Are
we
we
as a
doing?
country, no, we
Sorry.
are not. So we as a
Yeah.
country need
Yeah.
to get on these difficult journeys. But there is a great temptation of doing these quick fixes that I will get 60 lateral entrants or 600 lateral entrants. So some people have been pushing a slogan, 500 lateral entrants. And I don't think that works. There are no quick fixes. Development is a very slow journey. It will take 100 years for India to become an advanced economy. So we should not think that there's any quick rush. There's no quick sprint that will get us there. There are no shortcuts. There are no magic bullets. You have to do the hard work. It is
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah, so I remember the last podcast I had with Dr. Rajat Katuria, who is a dean of Srinagar University. So
Yeah.
we had, like, I had the same, argument that we have to change the narration of what we are saying. Like, for example, we keep talking about 2027, 2050 will be $55 trillion economy, will be $6 trillion economy. So, but it's not the actual growth, seems like what you are also mentioning about it. So it's like shift of narration that what we are saying and what we actually are doing at the back. What do you think on
Yeah.
this part?
Yeah. So, a lot of optimistic rara statements are not helpful.
Yes.
We should be honest, we should confront our problems. It is only by openly, honestly talking about our problems and criticizing the nature of the Indian state do we have a hope in hell of making progress. Otherwise, everybody is optimistic, everybody is rara, and the greatest reductionism then becomes these silver bullets that, oh, what we need is an IT system to fix the problems of Indian agriculture. So there is no thing more useless in fixing Indian agriculture than an IT system. So I just want to briefly put up a suggestion, gentle readers, that Amit Verma and I have a YouTube show that is called Everything is Everything. In
Yes.
that, we have an episode which is what is wrong with Indian agriculture. And we spent maybe 60 minutes or 70 minutes talking about Indian agriculture. And there is not a whiff, there is not a nano kilogram. There's not a nanogram of IT in that. There is nothing to do in fixing Indian agriculture that is related to IT.
Okay.
But in modern India, we've just got this whole silver bullet notion that, oh, computers will fix everything. So,
Okay. So now, getting into the like a little bit on the inequality part, since we have talked our workforce is good, we have a good earning capabilities through private firms and foreign institutions. So, what do you think in terms of inequality because of skill gap, and skill gap leads to the earning capability gap? And as we have, like you mentioned, that the workforce that India has, which has that high capability and good skills, is very less. So do you think the inequality will increase more? I mean, can we expect that, or like it's gonna be like balancing little bit?
So I want to say a couple of things. First, inequality does not bother me in and of itself. Okay, we want India to become a rich country. So I always say, would you rather be poor in India? Would you rather be poor in Germany? And the answer is you'd rather be poor in Germany. So if you are at the 20th percentile of income in Germany, you're at the bottom of Germany. You're much better off than being at the bottom of India. Would you rather be poor in South Korea? Would you rather be poor in India? The answer is you would rather be poor in South Korea. So I don't get fussed about inequality. Our journey is to make India great, so that everybody in India is better off. And to be poor in India should be a much better experience than it is today. So I don't particularly notice the inequality. It doesn't bother me greatly. Second, uh, I would like to say to everybody that the skills gap is not immutable. Okay. So I think we in India suffer from a bit of a caste system, that we think that, education, university, degree, all these things are like a caste. That if I'm from IIT Bombay, I'm smart from life for life.
For life,
And if
yes.
I'm, yeah, and if I'm not from IIT, then I'm not smart for life. And I think this is the heart of what is wrong with what is going on in India today. I think these degrees and all have nothing to do. They're neither necessary nor sufficient. What matters is for each of us, it's our culture, it's our tenacity, it's our learning orientation, that if we keep on chipping away, we keep thinking, we keep questioning, if we keep surrounding ourselves with clever people, with cool people, we do debates, we do disagreement, we do arguments, we keep reading, we keep debating, then we will become better. And then year after year after year, life is very long. Longevity has gone up. Year after year after year, we'll get better. So I think there is one critical thing that is wrong, which is this caste system around the labels, that if you are from some famous university, somehow you are good for life. If you're not from some famous university, somehow you're supposed to be second rate for life. I think this is just bullshit. This is wrong. This is not a correct description of human beings. And all around us, I'm sure you can show me 20 examples of people from IIT who are actually mediocre. And you can show me 20 examples of people who are not from IIT who are hajar cool. So I
Amazing.
feel that,
Yeah.
yeah, correct. So I feel that is the important thing that all of us need to talk much more openly about. That, this MIT, Harvard, IIT, all these labels are the dangerous thing. It's like a caste system that you're coded. At age 21, you've got something written on your forehead that I attended UC Berkeley, so I'm smart. Or I attended NIIT Kurukshetra, so I'm not smart. Okay, these are wrong conceptions. And we, each of us, have to fight the moral and emotional battle inside our hearts to break free of these shackles. And we, each of us, need to get onto learning journeys. And then the sky is the limit. So I think that a lot is possible, but we have to cross these cultural barriers through which we can rise to much higher standards of capability. The people who are stuck at low levels of capability have only themselves to blame. It is they who have to break free of these shackles. And these shackles are in the culture, they are in your expectations. The people who spend their lives on cricket and Bollywood are then complaining that I'm not on a learning journey, I'm not on a career path. I say, yeah. So, I mean, if you devote your intensity to cricket
Yes,
and Bollywood, how do you ever expect to learn anything?
that's true. That's true. So one thing that still stuck on me, that as you mentioned the first statement, that inequality doesn't bother you, it's okay. But if India has to become rich, then how inequality will not play a role in that? I
The
mean,
two different things. The two different things. Inequality is the distribution of the income. India to become rich is the mean or the median income. They're two different things. So just intuitively, the United States has 10x the per capita GDP of India. Okay.
correct.
So the dream in India is that in 100 years, India will gain 10x. Meaning the United States will move further.
Move
I'm
further,
not saying we
correct.
will match. Yeah. I'm
Yes,
not saying
yes.
we will match the United States in 100 years.
Never.
The dream is that in 100 years, India will gain 10x. And roughly speaking, think that it's a 10x for everybody. So Mukesh Ambani will go up by 10x. He will become like Elon Musk rich. And the poorest person will go up by 10x. So a poor person in India will become like a poor person in America. Okay. That is development. Everybody gets better off. And don't think about inequality too much. Focus on the growth journey. The important thing is the growth journey. Inequality takes you to class warfare, where we start fighting with each other that you are poor and I am rich, and we get on the streets and we start fighting with each other. It's a very unhealthy thing to do.
Yeah, no, I got what you're trying to say, but my motive was to inequality is about, how you are able to increase your standard of living, like,
Correct. So
get
then use the
get
word growth. Use the words growth. Don't use the words inequality. We want growth. We want India to become richer, which means everybody will benefit. You don't have to start talking about inequality. The mindset of the inequality janta is we will hold today's India intact. We will not do growth, but we will instead do class warfare where we will use the power of the state to take away money from the rich and give it to the poor, those kinds of things. That's a different level of conflict within the country. It's better to not play in ways that exacerbate conflict within India. God knows we have too much conflict inside
yes.
India already.
Great. I mean, this is great. So, this is really a good discussion. I think this will go on and on. But yes, one thing I have to say, like, this is probably my 15th episode, but the point of view I got here is exactly different what we have heard. It, and there is nothing right or wrong. It just, the way we think, like, that is completely different. I think we should have these kind of opinions. Both kind of opinion has to be there to have to come to an agreement, to come to understand things, and criticism is important. So yes,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
uh,
so I don't pretend to be right, but I
yes,
do pretend, yeah, I do pretend to do first principles thinking, that I have no respect or reverence for what famous people are thinking or what some government person is saying or some MIT person is saying. I will think from first principles. I will argue everything from scratch. I will try to build a coherent intellectual framework. And I do know Bollywood and I do know cricket, so I've all day long I only do one thing.
got it. So great. So thank you so much, sir, for joining the podcast.
My
uh
pleasure.
yeah, thank you so much for listening my podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.